Hey there, I'm Nick Gavin, the Culinary Creative Director at ChefSteps, and today we're learning all about air frying. We'll cover the basics, what it is, how it works, how it's different from deep frying, and what you can expect. We'll go over some of the general best practices so you can get the best results out of all your favorite air-fried foods. If you're tuning in, be sure to drop your questions in the chat. One of our experts is standing by with the answers. All right, let's get started. So, what is air frying? Its basic definition, in my opinion, is it's pretty much a souped up countertop oven that can heat the surface of your foods about twice as fast as a home standard oven. But before we get too much into the tips and tricks that we have for you around air frying, let's compare it to deep frying. So what is deep frying? Deep frying is a method of cooking where the medium of cooking and heat transfer is fat. So it's extremely efficient at what it does. What's interesting though is during deep frying, the fat is only within contact of your food for about maybe 20% to 15% of the cook. What's happening at the beginning is as it cooks, the steam is escaping, almost creating a vapor bubble around it, protecting the food. On the latter end of the cook, that oil will become in contact. As the surface desiccates, dries out, that's when the browning and texture is going to form on it. So it's very efficient at what it does. So what is air frying now? Air frying is basically forced convection on radiant heat. It's very, very efficient at what it does. It's probably the closest results you can achieve in a home oven, countertop oven, compared to deep frying. Though they both have frying in their names, it's very different. So what also is very interesting is as you're baking, the steam escapes. It's going to cool down the oven. That's called evaporative cooling. Having that high convection is going to help keep that temperature regulated at a high temp, getting the texture and the results you're looking for. Super flavorful, brown, and crispy. So now that we've compared deep frying and air frying, let's get into it. There's some specific principles and rules you should always take into account that'll help you achieve the best results. So the first thing I want to show you is air-fried French fries. All right, so maybe you're thinking about getting an air fryer or you just got one and you're like, I want to make French fries from scratch. I recommend not doing that. There are some things you want to just save for deep frying. You know, making French fries from scratch, you're frying 3 times, you're making a mess, you got to deal with that oil later. It's a lot of work. So the workaround is using frozen French fries. This is our favorite type of ones to use. Ore-Ida Gold. These are extra crispy. They put a lot of thought into it. To actually just bake and get good crispy results is very tricky. These are actually pre-fried. So having a little oil on your fries already is a good thing. It's going to help unlock the texture. Also, there's added starches to it, and there's also a leavening agent, such as baking soda. That's going to help with the browning during the final bake in the oven. All right, so with the fries though, even though it says it on the package, it is really, really important. We recommend starting with frozen fries right from the freezer into the air fryer. If you start with thawed, the issue you're going to run into is inconsistent cooking results. The tips might burn too fast and the inside might be a little soggy, so keep them frozen, okay? All right. What kind of rack are we using, Nick? Perforated rack. Another reason why air frying is efficient at what it does is you're not just baking right on a tray. Why that's important is if you just throw your fries right onto like a cookie sheet or baking sheet, they're just going to be steaming on the bottom. This is going to help us unlock maximum airflow. That way you're getting crispy results on all edges of the fry. Okay? So, boom. You don't want to just throw into the oven now. There's a little bit of thought that has to go into this. You want to make sure they're pretty evenly spaced. You don't want them overlapping too much. Again, it's about maximum airflow on the surface. So give them a little spread. And the kitchen team here, Kyle, Matthew, they've ran like close to 25 trials with frozen French fries. And one important thing is not overloading your tray. So we recommend not going lower than 250 grams. They will overcook and they'll be too crunchy. We're looking for crispy. If you go above 350 grams, again, you're overloading, you're trapping in so much steam. We're trying to remove that steam to get a crispy exterior. So stay between the sweet spot of 250 and 350 grams. Here we have 350. Okay, so one thing that I've already done, which is probably the most important, is making sure your oven is preheated. We're set to air fry, super convection, all right? So with this model of oven, the manufacturer says it takes preheating about 5 minutes. We actually like to double that time. We want to store up as much heat and energy in the cavity of the oven. That way we're reducing and evacuating steam to get the crispy results. We're chasing those the whole time. So we're going to preheat for 10 minutes. This oven already is. And so we're going to pop them in. All right. Rack placement is also key because we're having radiant heat from the top and bottom. We want to go right into the middle. If you go too low or too high, you might burn on the fries. The fan is on the side, blasting air in the whole time. So just keep them in the middle. Halfway through the cook, you're just going to give them a rotate, maybe mix them up a little bit on the tray, and that's all you have to think about. All right. There we go. Right in the middle. So these will cook for about 12 to 13 minutes or so. And with frozen foods cooking air fry, look at the back of the package. Generally, there's air fried instructions now. I would start by following those. But if there aren't, take the bake cooking recommended time and reduce it by 20%. I'm not saying it's going to be perfectly done at that point in time during the cook, but that's a good time to take a look at your food and check on it, okay? So we're going to let these air fry up. But my buddy Matt back here already has some ready, so let's check them out. All right, cool. Boom. All right. Look at this. Crazy golden. Overall, these are really consistent. So the texture, super crispy. Woo. For something that only takes 13 minutes out of the freezer, those are really good results. Super easy, it's a weeknight win. So this is just like one easy gateway, beginning thing to do with your air fryer. I think it'll pay off for you later on. But let's just add a little bit of our personality to it. All right, you can even add your favorite spice blend that you have around. ChefSteps, we have a recipe for a Creole spice blend that we really like. Okay. All right, here we go. Plate them up. Boom. Air fried French fries, 13 minutes. All right, so beef and broccoli. Beef and broccoli is typically cooked in a wok. The kiss of flame gives a beautiful, nice charry flavor and aroma to the dish itself. But, you know, a lot of people might not have that flame at home or even a setup outdoors. So I want to show you how to make nice beef and broccoli very conveniently in your air fry. This is an easy staple, and it kind of taps into a little bit of sheet pan meals that a lot of people are doing, cooking multiple things at once on one pan. It's in the name, okay? So first things first, we're going to talk about the cut of a flank steak here. A lot of people, they might leave their food out at room temperature too long, even if it's like 5-10 minutes, especially meat or seafood. The fats, the texture will get very soft, making it even harder to cut if you don't have a sharp knife. So what I recommend doing, just taking your meat, popping it in the freezer for like 15 minutes before you're ready to start cutting. It'll firm it up, make it a little bit easier for you, all right? Cool, here we go, nice and firm. Okay, we're gonna cut it into thin strips, maybe about 1/8 of an inch thick or so. Also too, like with these thin strips, you wouldn't just throw it in an oven or in an oven to roast. You know, all it's gonna do is overcook before you get any texture or charring on the surface building flavor. So that's why an air fryer with that radiant heat, high convection, is gonna help us out to get there. You notice too, the grains of the meat are going this way. So we're slicing against them. That's gonna make it more tender, less chewy later on after it's cooked. So I really think this method would work for just about any steak. You know, I don't know if I would throw a tenderloin in for this method, but I don't know, like a New York strip. But yeah, very easy, even a skirt steak. About done. So there is a reason why I piled it up. I don't want someone to have to deal with their chopsticks or fork having to deal with that large piece later on. To get ahead of that, to make it all bite size, we're just going to slice it right down the middle. Okay. All right, we're going to go right into the bowl. Let's wipe this down. All right. To give it like a quick marinade, we're gonna do soy sauce and brown sugar. Feel free to add in any other spices you want to, 5 spice, you name it, it's gonna be great. So, I do prefer to let it sit in the marinade for at least 15 minutes. It can go in the marinade for, I don't know, an hour. Haven't done it overnight, but I bet the results will be pretty good. Permeations of marinade are a lot slower than you think, but because these are sliced thin against the grain, it's going to permeate and travel in and season it and firm it up pretty quickly. Just give it a little mix. All right, cool. Set that aside for a minute. Let's talk about the broccoli itself. One thing that's really important in the air fryer is to be really uniform in size of what you put in there. I know for broccoli it might be hard to get them exactly the same, but if you have a larger one, or just quarter it. If you have a smaller one, keep it whole. This is going to help the food cook at a very even rate. Nobody wants a super crunchy broccoli right next to a mushy one. Who gets excited about that? Nobody. So we got all those pre-portioned up. The next thing that's really important is a little oil goes a long ways. I know we think about air fryers as being a healthier alternative to deep frying. It can be, depending on what you're cooking, how you're doing it, but just a little bit. Even like a tablespoon of oil in here, a neutral oil, is gonna help actually conduct the heat throughout the surface of the meat, browning evenly on all sides, okay? So just a little bit. Toss it up. Make sure it's well coated. All right, that's it. So although I'm doing this with broccoli and onions, you can change it up. You know, if you want to go more in like a fajita direction, do bell peppers and onions and maybe change up your spice mix. It's totally up to you. It's very forgiving. Just make sure it's cut the same size and you have a little bit of oil on there. Before I go to the rack though, what I like to do is give it a spray with non-stick cooking spray. Just a little bit. All right, we're gonna dump it on there. And as we learned with the French fries, we're just gonna space it out evenly. Okay. Doesn't need to be perfect. Oh, look at these bad boys. Broccoli, don't get rid of your stem. The stem is actually my favorite part. Chop it up in there, it's gonna deliver great texture. Okay, so we're gonna pop the beef right in there with it. It's gonna be hard to not overlap with this one. A little's fine. Okay. I also like to be doing this on a tray with parchment, just always thinking about making sure that you're working clean, making it easier to clean up after you cook. Cooking will be a lot more fun that way. Spread it out. All right, that's it. Before you go into the oven though, think about keeping our oven clean, you know, because again, the rack is perforated, the oil, the sauce, and water is gonna start dripping onto your elements that can create smoke. So thinking ahead and getting ahead of that, we're going to add a tray to the bottom rack. Rack position 8, because you know by now that we're going on to the middle rack, rack position 3. So let's pop that in. Okay. So it's right above the pan. We got the fan here. We're at 480 degrees Fahrenheit, high convection. So these are only going to cook for about 10, 13 minutes or so. But one thing that's cool at the very end, using an autopilot within the app experience connected to this oven, is it's automatically going to switch over to broil. That broil coming from the top is going to deliver on that final kiss of char. But with any oven, Breville oven or countertop oven, you can manually adjust it to broil later on. So it's totally up to you with what you want to do, but let's check out the results. Woo! Look at that. That is a ton of color for like a 10 to 13 minute cook. That's pretty unreal. You cannot get that just at roast in the oven or bake in there for sure. The results do resemble cooking in a wok or a high heat and pan, but let's season it up now. So one thing that's kind of interesting about a lot of dishes that are stir-fried or deep-fried is they go through a velveting technique. That is a starch slurry that's coated on the meat before it's fried. Okay, that's going to make a really nice texture and the texture of the sauce as well. We're hacking that. Reason being is because we don't want to add more moisture to the outside of the meat, because we have to get rid of that moisture before we get that color and texture and crust on the food. So we actually made a quick sauce, which is comprised of, what do we got in here? We got beef stock, soy sauce, brown sugar, ginger, garlic. But the thing that's unlocking the texture resembling the velveting is we're adding cornstarch in here. So it's going to thicken it up, give it a nice texture. Check this out. Okay. As we spray the rack, nothing's sticking. Super easy to get off there. All right. Let's give it a mix. Look at that. All those charred bits. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna plate this up. Got a little bit of rice. Good amount of rice. There we go. Add a little bit of sesame seeds. Top it however you want. Boom. There you have it. Air-fried beef and broccoli. Only took about 14, 15 minutes to make. Solid meal, very easy. Delivered on the results of the char. Cooked really well at the same time as the broccoli, the flank steak, and the broccoli. So I really recommend this. All right, there you go. You just learned a few basic tips and tricks to unlocking great results with air-fried beef and broccoli. Air-fried salmon nuggets. All right, so we're gonna be doubling up on a few of the tips we've already gone over. Probably noticing there's a pattern forming here, but I got a couple more that'll bring you up to speed on the 101 basics that we recommend you knowing about air frying. Okay, starting with pizza salmon. This is about 1 pound. We do recommend going with a fattier salmon if you can find it. Maybe a farm-raised one will typically be fatter. More of wild caught will be leaner. So go for the farm or just a super fatty wild caught king salmon. All right, here we go. So this is gonna be the quickest, probably one of the quickest air fries you'll ever do. I hope you try this. It's only gonna be about 3 to 4 minutes in the oven because we're gonna make these really small like nuggets. So we're gonna locate the middle of the fillet and we're focusing on about 1-inch cubes. If you go smaller, yes, it's gonna cook fast, but you're not going to get any of the Maillard reaction or flavor on the surface. We're not going for blackened salmon here. We're just getting a little bit of brown color to add some more flavor and make it even look a little more appetizing. So going right down the middle. Doesn't need to be perfectly 1 inch. You just got to make sure they're all about the same size. All right. Okay, get your trusty bowl. All right, so we're going to put them in the bowl. But we're going to clean up a little bit, clean as we go, making it easier to enjoy our food with the stressful amount of dishes piling up behind us. All right, so seasoning here. We're just keeping it simple. It's salt, pepper, smoked paprika, and we're going to add a little oil and baking powder. I'll explain why all these ingredients are key. So the ones that you can really play with is the smoked paprika and the pepper. Season it however you want. I really recommend adding the salt to it and the brown sugar. Those are going to season it really well as it cooks, as well as the brown sugar is going to help with developing more of caramelization Maillard on the surface. But the secret ingredient that you know now that we're adding a leavening agent. So you can use baking soda. Here we're going to be using baking powder. That's going to, again, really jumpstart the Maillard reaction. It's lowering the pH of it, so it's going to caramelize much, much faster. So it's totally optional, but we recommend it because this is a really, really short cooking time. So anything we can do to help develop that color faster is key. So add it all around. Okay. Let's get it mixed. Make sure it's well coated. Look at that. Woo. Okay, as we discussed earlier, a little oil goes a long ways. So we're just going to add a splash of neutral oil. Cool. Wonderful. Okay. Also, too, a couple things we've already went over, making sure your oven is preheated. This is well preheated, as you've noticed me cook through all these. 480, super convection. We're going to add a pan to the bottom rack to catch any fat that drips down. Because any fat that drips and hits that element, it's just going to smoke, and it's going to be really annoying. You're probably going to set off your fire alarm. Got that in there. All right. Got our tray. Air fry rack. Let's give it a spray. Okay. Just going to pop these on. Again, evenly spaced out. All right. Sweet. So we're going to serve these as a little sandwich of sorts. We have some tender bread that you can even use your oven right after. I recommend before toasting them in the oven under broil for maybe just a minute or so. You can pan sear them as Matt did here. It's totally up to you with how you like your buns, but be ready, have all your mise en place, the stuff you need to make your sandwich, done in front of you, because you don't want to run around and get into the weeds when your salmon is cooking, because you don't want it to get too cold when it comes out of the oven. So we got our bread here, got a real quick salad that'll make during those 4 minutes. It'll probably take me 30 seconds. So let's get cooking. All right. Here we're gonna do It's not at the very bottom, but slightly lower. Okay, so 4 minutes in there. We're gonna check it at 3 though, okay? We're going for about a medium texture, but as soon as you start seeing color on the surface of the salmon, you're just about there. So you can temp it if you want, but totally up to you. We have times and temperatures and recommendations for you within the app. All right, so we have some shaved lettuce here. We got some pickled lemons. These are just shaved on a mandolin, a little salt, sugar, vinegar. You just gotta make it, let them sit for 30 minutes, but they'll last up to a couple weeks in the fridge. So, okay, I like to add a little whole grain mustard, pepper, just a little bit of salt, olive oil, cool. Let it mix. All right, cool. It's all ready. Okay, we got our buns toasted. I like to add a little bit of mayonnaise to it, especially Kewpie. I love the savory umami that comes from it. Okay. Don't need a lot. Let's check on our salmon. It's looking good. You see it sizzling all around. That fat is just like frying on the outside of it. The bicarb, the sugar, they're going to town right now, developing color. Sweet. Let's just give it like maybe 1 more minute. Should be super flaky to the touch, and that'll be it. Look at what's happening on the surface. It's like foaming and bubbling for 2 reasons. One is the baking powder. It's been activated from the heat and the acid in it. So it's foaming up, developing color. We also have that sugar that's caramelizing on the surface. We have our spices that are beginning to toast. That paprika is becoming a darker, kind of like a light brown color. And we have our drip tray on the bottom catching all that mess that's coming off there. So they're very, very close. Maybe just another 30 seconds. These should be really flaky tender when they come out. All right, let's check it out. Look at that. Boom. Ready for this? Whoa, look at that, medium. Nailed it. 3 to 4 minutes in air fryer, 480. These are great. Let's see how consistent I was. Boom. Another medium. Just nailing it. Cool. Let's plate one of these up. Boom. Just a bright, simple salad. You can keep these whole on there if you want. You can even give them a little smash. Oh, dude, look at that. Like, so perfect. Let's load it up. Let's load it up. Boom. Right, here we go. Flake 2. Cool. Sweet. There you go. Air-fried salmon nuggets. Made a little sandwich out of it. It was just a tiny bit of extra work. Again, we went over the basics. We know preheating our oven, putting the safety tray at the bottom, adding bicarb baking powder to it to help out with the marinade reaction, seasoning it, correct portioning, keeping an eye on it in the oven. That's about as easy as it gets in an air fryer. 5 minutes and you got food on the table. What's not to love? That's wonderful. Super simple, air-fried salmon nuggets. All right, so thanks again for tuning in. We hope you feel a little or a lot more confident with whatever you are air frying. But don't miss part 2 of our air frying class, Mastering Texture, with me, Nick Gavin. For more from me, Breville, and ChefSteps, follow along. We are at Breville and at ChefSteps. But be sure to download the Breville Plus app where you can find these recipes, in-depth live, on-demand classes like this one, and so much more. So long.